Have you ever wondered what you would do if your freedom was stolen in a single night? Dr. Simone Clark had always believed in using her skills to help those who needed it most. That's what had brought her to Moldova, working with Doctors Without Borders to help contain a tuberculosis outbreak in rural villages. She had been there for 3 months, living in basic conditions, working 18-hour days, and loving every moment of it. This was the work she had trained for, the work that mattered. The night it happened, Simone had been walking back to her lodging after a particularly long day at the clinic. The village had no streetlights, and the dirt road was dark except for the thin beam of her flashlight. She was thinking about the patient she'd stabilized that evening, a young woman with extensively drug-resistant tuberculosis, who would need months of treatment but would probably survive. She never heard them coming. One moment she was walking, and the next, rough hands grabbed her from behind. A cloth pressed over her mouth and nose, smelling of chemicals. She tried to scream, tried to fight, but her medical training told her what was happening even as her consciousness faded. Chloroform. She was being drugged. When Simone woke, she was in the back of a moving van, her wrists zip-tied together, her mouth gagged. 3 other women were with her, all of them bound and gagged, all of them terrified. One was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Another stared at the van's wall with empty eyes, clearly in shock. Simone forced herself to think like a doctor, to assess the situation clinically rather than give in to panic. They were all young women, all relatively healthy-looking. They were being transported somewhere, which meant someone had a plan for them. Human trafficking. The realization hit her like ice water. The van drove for what felt like hours, stopping occasionally but never letting them out. When it finally stopped for good, they were dragged out into a basement somewhere, the concrete floor cold beneath Simone's feet. Her medical bag was gone, her passport and phone taken. She was wearing scrubs and sneakers, the same clothes she'd worn to the clinic that morning. How long ago was that? Hours? Days? A woman appeared, older, hard-faced, speaking in Russian to armed guards. She looked at each of the captive women with the cold assessment of someone evaluating livestock. When her eyes landed on Simone, they narrowed with interest. "This one is different," she said in English, her accent thick. "Educated. American. She will bring good price." "I'm a doctor," Simone said, her voice hoarse. "I'm here with Doctors Without Borders. People will be looking for me. If you let me go now, I won't press charges. I'll just go back to my work." The woman laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Doctor? Even better. Educated women are worth more. Especially American doctors." She turned to the guards. "Put her in the private room. Clean her up. We have auction in 2 days." Simone spent those 2 days in a small room with a cot, a sink, and a toilet. They gave her food, allowed her to shower, and brought her clothes, an expensive-looking black dress that fit perfectly, designer shoes, and cosmetics. The message was clear. They were preparing her to be presented, to be sold like merchandise. She tried everything. She tried talking to the guards, explaining that kidnapping an aid worker would bring international attention. She tried to escape twice, only to be caught and warned that the next attempt would result in punishment. She tried to stay calm, to think of a plan, but panic kept threatening to overwhelm her. On the second night, the hard-faced woman returned with a younger woman who spoke perfect English. "I am Anya," the younger woman said. "I will explain what happens tomorrow." "I don't want to know what happens tomorrow," Simone said. "I want to go home." "That is not option." Anya's voice was matter-of-fact, almost kind. "Tomorrow you go to auction. Rich men bid for you. Whoever pays most, you go with them." "And then what? What happens to me?" Anya looked uncomfortable. "That depends on who buys you. Some men want wives, some want workers, some want—" She trailed off, but Simone understood. "I'm a doctor. I save lives. You can't just sell me like property." "We can, and we will. But I tell you something. Tomorrow at auction, there will be many types of men. Some very bad, some less bad. If you are smart, you make yourself attractive to less bad ones. You understand? You want me to help them sell me? I want you to survive. These men, they buy what they want. But you have some power. You are educated. You speak well. You are beautiful. Make them want you for your brain, not just your body. It is better that way." After Anya left, Simone sat on the cot and tried to process this nightmare. She was going to be auctioned, sold, like property, and, according to Anya, her best option was to try to attract a buyer who would value her education over her body. It was the most degrading, terrifying thing she could imagine. But if it was the only way to survive, she would do it, and then she would find a way to escape. The auction house was nothing like Simone had imagined. She had pictured something dark and dirty, like a warehouse. Instead, She was brought to what looked like a upscale nightclub, all velvet ropes and mood lighting. The stage was professional, with good lighting and sound. The chairs facing it were plush and arranged theater style. This was an established operation, polished and organized. Simone was kept backstage with a dozen other women, all of them dressed in expensive clothes, all of them terrified. Guards watched them constantly. Anya was there too, checking each woman's appearance with a critical eye. "Remember what I told you?" she whispered to Simone. "Be smart, survive." One by one, the women were led onto the stage. Simone could hear the auctioneer speaking in multiple languages, describing each woman's attributes like they were cars or paintings. She could hear men calling out bids in various accents. The whole thing was surreal and horrifying. When it was Simone's turn, she was pushed onto the stage, the lights blindingly bright. She couldn't see the audience, just dark shapes beyond the lights. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought she might pass out. The auctioneer began his spiel. "Gentlemen, we have something special. Dr. Simone Clark, age 31, American citizen, medical doctor, specializing in infectious diseases, fluent in English and French, conversational Spanish, graduate of Johns Hopkins Medical School. Before her unfortunate circumstances, she was working with Doctors Without Borders, a rare find, beauty, brains, and practical skills." Simone forced herself to stand straight, to look confident rather than terrified. If she was going to survive this, she needed to convince whoever bought her that she was valuable for her skills, not just her body. "Bidding starts at $1 million, the auctioneer announced. The bids came fast. 1 million, 1.5 million, 2 million. Simone's head spun. People were bidding millions of dollars for her like she was a piece of art. 3 million, 4 million. The bids kept climbing. 5 million. A voice called out from the back, deep and accented. 5.5 million. Another voice countered. 6 million. 7 million. Simone tried to see who was bidding, but the lights were too bright. All she could make out were silhouettes and the occasional glint of expensive jewelry or watches. 8 million, the deep voice from the back said again, more firmly this time. There was a pause, then another bidder. 8.5 million. $10 million. The deep voice again. And this time there was finality in it. A statement rather than a bid. The auction house went silent. 10 million going once, the auctioneer said, his voice excited. This was clearly a record. Going twice, sold. To the gentleman in the back for $10 million. Simone was ushered off stage in a daze. $10 million. Someone had just paid $10 million for her. She didn't know if that was better or worse than a lower bid. She was taken to a private room backstage and told to wait. After about 20 minutes, the door opened, and a man walked in. He was tall, probably 6 feet 3 inches, with dark hair and the kind of Mediterranean features that suggested Italian heritage. He wore a perfectly tailored dark suit and moved with the casual confidence of someone used to commanding rooms. But it was his eyes that caught Simone's attention. Dark, gray, intelligent, and studying her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Dr. Clark," he said, his Italian accent sophisticated. "I am Enzo Calabrese." Simone forced herself to meet his eyes. "You're the person who bought me." "I am the person who paid for you, yes. There is a difference." "Is there?" "Because from where I'm standing, I was just sold like property." Something that might have been approval flickered in his eyes. "You have spirit. That is good. It will make what comes next easier." "What comes next? What are you planning to do with me?" Enzo walked to the room's small window, looking out at the city lights beyond. "Tell me, Dr. Clark, what do you think a man pays $10 million for?" Simone's stomach churned. "I don't know. I'm hoping it's not what I'm imagining. What you are imagining is probably that I want you for sexual purposes. That I paid $10 million for an attractive doctor because I am some kind of depraved criminal who needs to buy women." He turned to face her. "You are partially correct. I am a criminal. But I did not pay $10 million for sex. I can get that for free." "Then why?" "Because you are Dr. Simone Clark, infectious disease specialist, graduate of Johns Hopkins, volunteer with Doctors Without Borders. Because 3 weeks ago, my younger sister Maria was diagnosed with extensively drug-resistant tuberculosis, the same disease you have been treating in Moldova. Because I have spent the last 2 weeks trying to find someone qualified to treat her, and every specialist I contacted was either too afraid of my reputation or wanted nothing to do with my family." Simone stared at him. "Your sister has XDR-TB?" "Yes. She contracted it while doing charity work in Southeast Asia. By the time she came home and we got her diagnosed, it had progressed significantly. The doctors here say there is nothing they can do, that she has perhaps 6 months. XDR-TB is treatable. It requires a specific combination of medications, and very careful monitoring, but it's treatable. The regimen is long, at least 18 to 24 months, and the side effects can be brutal, but it works. That is what I hoped you would say. Enzo pulled a chair over and sat down, regarding her seriously. I have a proposal for you, Dr. Clark. Treat my sister. Keep her alive. If she survives, I will not only give you your freedom but also pay you $10 million, the same amount I paid for you tonight. Simone's mind reeled. You paid $10 million for me so I would treat your sister? I paid $10 million because that is what it took to win the auction. I had people monitoring human trafficking operations across Eastern Europe for weeks, waiting for someone with your qualifications to surface. When I heard you had been taken, I knew this was my chance. You could have just contacted me directly, asked me to treat your sister. I would have said yes. Would you? Would you have agreed to treat the sister of a mafia boss? To come to my home, live under my roof, and provide care to someone in my family? Simone wanted to say yes, but honestly, she probably would have refused. She would have been too afraid, too concerned about the legal and ethical implications. I see you understand the problem, Enzo said quietly. No legitimate doctor would help me, so I had to find an illegitimate way to get what I needed. By buying a kidnapped doctor at an auction. Yes, it is not ideal, I admit, but Maria is my baby sister. She is 23 years old with her whole life ahead of her. I will do whatever it takes to save her, even things that make me more of a monster than I already am. Simone studied him carefully. He seemed sincere, but he was also clearly dangerous. A man who could casually spend $10 million at a human trafficking auction, who had connections to track her across countries, who admitted to being a criminal. If I refuse, she asked, then I will find another way to help Maria. And you. He paused. I will still give you your freedom. I did not buy you to force you into servitude, Dr. Clark. I bought you to give you a choice that you would not have had with any other buyer. A choice? What choice? Agree to your terms or be set free with nothing while your sister dies? The choice to help someone who desperately needs it, who has no other options. Is that not what you have been doing in Moldova? Helping people who have no other options? He had a point. Simone had spent 3 months treating TB patients in villages with no other access to healthcare. This was the same thing, just a very different context. I want to see her medical records, Simone said finally. I want to assess her condition myself before I agree to anything. Of course. Enzo stood and extended his hand. Do we have an agreement? Simone looked at his hand, knowing that shaking it would commit her to a path she couldn't predict. But what choice did she really have? She could refuse and be released with nothing, still in Moldova with no passport or money. Or she could agree and potentially save someone's life while securing her own freedom and a fortune. She shook his hand. His grip was firm and warm. We have an agreement. Enzo's home was a villa on the Italian coast, a sprawling estate that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Simone was given her own suite of rooms, luxurious beyond anything she had experienced. And more importantly, she was given Maria's complete medical records. The young woman's case was bad but not hopeless. The XDR-TB had spread to both lungs and had already caused significant damage. The Italian doctors had tried a standard treatment regimen, but it had failed. Maria was getting sicker. She needs a completely different approach, Simone explained to Enzo that first evening in his study. XDR-TB doesn't respond to the usual medications. We need to use a combination of newer drugs. Bedaquiline, linezolid, moxifloxacin. It's going to be expensive and the side effects will be rough, but it's her best chance. Cost is not a concern. Get whatever you need. I'll also need to monitor her closely. Daily blood work at first, then weekly. We'll need imaging every month to track the lesions. And she'll need to be in a controlled environment. TB is contagious, and with XDR strains, we can't risk spreading it. This villa has a medical wing. I had it built when my mother was dying of cancer 5 years ago. It has everything you might need. Over the next few days, Simone set up a proper treatment room and began Maria's therapy. The young woman was wary at first, having been told that Simone was there to help, but not exactly how she had arrived. My brother bought you at an auction? Maria asked one morning as Simone was starting her IV medications. Yes. And you agreed to help me anyway? I'm a doctor. Helping sick people is what I do, regardless of the circumstances. Maria was quiet for a moment. I am sorry for how you came to be here. Enzo, he is not a bad man, but he loves me too much sometimes. It makes him do things that are morally questionable? Yes, that. Maria smiled weakly. He said he will free you when I am well. He will keep that promise. Enzo always keeps his promises. Let's focus on getting you well then. As the weeks passed, Simone fell into a routine. She spent most of her day with Maria, administering medications, monitoring symptoms, and adjusting treatment as needed. The young woman was responding well, though the side effects were significant. The linezolid caused neuropathy in her hands and feet. The bedaquiline made her nauseated, but the TB was retreating. In the evenings, Simone usually had dinner with Enzo. At first, these meals were professional, discussions of Maria's progress and treatment plans, but gradually, they began to talk about other things. Simone learned that Enzo was 38 years old, 7 years older than her. He had inherited his family's organization when he was 25 after his father was killed by a rival. He had spent the last 13 years trying to make the business more legitimate, moving away from drugs and protection rackets toward legal enterprises like restaurants and real estate. "I am not a good man," he told her one evening over wine. "I have done things I am not proud of, but I try to minimize harm. I do not sell drugs, I do not exploit women, and I do not hurt innocent people if I can avoid it. But you bought a person at an auction. To save my sister, and to save you from whoever else might have bought you. Do you know who the second highest bidder was? Viktor Sokolov, a Russian arms dealer who has a reputation for brutality toward women. Would you prefer I had let him win?" Simone didn't have an answer for that. "I know what I am," Enzo continued. "I know that buying you was wrong, that participating in that auction made me complicit in an evil system. But I also know that Maria is alive and getting better because I did it. And you are safe here, being treated with respect, rather than being abused by a monster. So I make my choices and live with the consequences. You really believe you saved me? Did I not? You were being sold to someone, Dr. Clark? At least with me, you have agency. You have a job to do, a patient to care for, and a promise of freedom when the work is done. What would you have had with anyone else?" He was right, and Simone hated that he was right. As the months passed, something unexpected happened. Simone started to see Enzo not as the criminal who had bought her, but as a man trying to protect his family while navigating an impossible situation. She saw the way he was tender with Maria, reading to her when she couldn't sleep, holding her hand during the worst of the side effects. She saw the way he treated his staff with respect and fairness. She saw the way he ran his businesses, always trying to find the ethical option when there was one. She also couldn't deny her growing attraction to him. Enzo was intelligent, well-read, and surprisingly funny. He spoke 4 languages fluently. He loved art and architecture, and he looked at Simone like she was the most fascinating person he had ever met. The moment everything changed came 4 months into Maria's treatment. The young woman had been doing well, her scans showing significant improvement. But one evening, she developed a high fever and became disoriented. Simone worked through the night, running tests, adjusting medications, monitoring vitals. It was a complication of the treatment, a known side effect of one of the drugs. Maria would recover, but it was a close call. At 3 a.m, Simone finally emerged from Maria's room to find Enzo pacing the hallway. He looked haggard, worry etched into every line of his face. "She is stable," Simone said immediately. "The fever is down, and she is sleeping. It was a reaction to the linezolid, but we caught it in time." Enzo sagged against the wall, relief flooding his features. "Thank God. Thank you, Simone. I thought." "I know what you thought, but she is going to be fine. I will monitor her closely, but the worst is over." Enzo crossed the hallway and pulled Simone into his arms, holding her tightly. "You saved her life tonight. You have been saving her life every day for 4 months." Simone meant to step back, to maintain professional distance, but instead she found herself melting into the embrace, her exhaustion and relief overwhelming her usual defenses. Enzo smelled like expensive cologne and coffee, and his arms were strong and warm. "I am just doing my job," she murmured against his chest. "No, you are doing far more than your job. You care about her. I see it in the way you talk to her, the way you worry about her. You did not have to care, but you do." Enzo pulled back slightly, looking down at her with those intense gray eyes. "Simone, Whatever he was going to say was lost as he leaned down and kissed her. It was soft at first, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away, but Simone didn't pull away. Instead, she kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, 4 months of denied attraction flooding through her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Enzo rested his forehead against hers. "I should not have done that. You are here because I forced you to be. This is not appropriate. You didn't force me. I made a choice. A choice I engineered by buying you at an auction. A choice that saved my life and Maria's." Simone pulled back to look at him. "I'm not going to pretend the circumstances of how I got here are okay. They're not. But I'm also not going to pretend I don't have feelings for you. Because I do. And that's my choice to make, not yours." "You have feelings for me?" Enzo's voice was rough with emotion. "Yes. I hate that I do. because it complicates everything. But I can't help it. You're complicated and dangerous, and you've done morally questionable things. But you're also brilliant and protective, and you love your sister enough to move heaven and earth for her. And you've treated me with more respect than any man I've ever dated. Any man you have dated did not buy you at an auction. No, but some of them treated me like property anyway. At least you see me as a person. Enzo cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. You are the most remarkable person I have ever met. These months with you have been. I did not expect to fall in love with you. You love me? Yes. Which is why I cannot act on these feelings. You are here because of circumstances I created. Any relationship between us would be built on that foundation, and that is not acceptable. What if I don't care about that? You should care. You should care very much. Enzo stepped back, putting distance between them. When Maria is well, I will honor my promise. You will be free, with $10 million to do whatever you wish. And you will leave here and build a life that has nothing to do with me. And if I don't want to leave, then I will make you leave. Because I will not trap you here with false choices and manufactured circumstances. You deserve better than that. It was the most frustrating, heartbreaking, and strangely beautiful thing anyone had ever said to Simone. Enzo was refusing to pursue her because he cared about her autonomy more than his own desires. Over the next 2 months, they maintained a careful distance. They still had dinner together to discuss Maria's progress, but they kept the conversation professional. They did not touch, did not allow themselves any private moments. It was torture. Maria, meanwhile, continued to improve. Her scans showed the TB lesions healing, her symptoms resolved. By month 6 of treatment, she was well enough to leave the medical wing and start living a more normal life. You saved my life, Maria told Simone one afternoon. I will never forget that. I'm just glad you're getting better. You are sad. Because of Enzo, yes? Simone didn't answer, but Maria smiled knowingly. He loves you. I see it in the way he looks at you. But he is too stubborn and too guilty to do anything about it. He wants me to leave when you're fully recovered. And will you? I don't know. Part of me wants to stay. But he's right that the circumstances of how we met make everything complicated. Circumstances do not matter. Love matters. Maria took her hand. My brother has spent his whole life carrying guilt for things our father did, for the business he inherited, for every choice he has had to make to survive. He does not believe he deserves happiness. But he does. And so do you. That evening, Simone made a decision. She found Enzo in his study, going over paperwork. I want to talk to you about Maria's treatment. Of course. How is she today? Getting stronger every day. She is responding so well that I think we can start reducing the frequency of her medications in another month. And, in 6 more months, she should be fully recovered. That is wonderful news. Enzo's smile was genuine but tinged with sadness. So your time here is almost finished. Yes. Which means I need to tell you something before I leave. Simone, let me finish. I came here because you bought me at an auction. That's the truth, and it's not something we can change. But over the last 6 months, I've had every opportunity to see who you really are. And I've fallen in love with you. Enzo stood, shaking his head. You do not love me. You have feelings born from proximity and stress, and don't tell me what I feel. I'm 31 years old. I know the difference between situational attachment and real love. And this is real. It cannot be. Why not? Because you bought me? Because the circumstances are complicated? Life is complicated, Enzo. But love is simple. I love you. And I think you love me too. So why are we denying ourselves happiness because of how we met? Because it is wrong. Because you came here as a captive, and anything that happens between us while you are here is tainted by that. Simone walked around his desk to stand in front of him. Then I'll leave. I'll take the money you promised me and go back to America. And in 6 months, when enough time has passed that you can't claim it's Stockholm Syndrome or proximity or any other excuse, I'll come back, and I'll ask you on a date, as a free woman with her own money and her own choices, and we'll see what happens. You would do that? Yes, because you're worth it. Because what we have is worth fighting for, even if we have to fight time and circumstances and guilt. Enzo pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her. You are too good for me. Probably, but I'm choosing you anyway. This time when he kissed her, there was no hesitation, no holding back. It was deep and passionate and full of months of denied desire. Simone melted into him, her hands in his hair, her body pressed against his. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Enzo smiled. 6 months. 6 months. That should be enough time for Maria to be fully recovered, and for me to go home and rebuild my life. And then I'll come back, and we'll see if this is real. It is real. I know it is real. but I also know you need to be free to choose it. He kissed her forehead gently. I will wait for you, Simone Clark. I will wait as long as you need. True to his word, when Maria reached month 7 of treatment and was showing no signs of active infection, Enzo arranged for Simone's departure. He had recovered her passport, provided her with the promised $10 million, and arranged for first-class transportation back to the United States. This is not goodbye, he told her at the airport, holding both her hands. This is a pause. 6 months from now, I will be here waiting. I'll be back, Simone promised. I know it seems crazy, but I mean it. I'll be back. I believe you. And I will be here. They kissed one last time, and Simone walked through security, looking back once to see Enzo still standing there, watching her go. Back in the United States, Simone threw herself into rebuilding her life. She reconnected with Doctors Without Borders, who had been searching for her since her disappearance. She told them a carefully edited version of the truth. She had been kidnapped, but had escaped with help from a benefactor who had paid for her freedom. It was close enough to the truth that she could sell it. With the $10 million Enzo had given her, Simone set up a foundation to treat drug-resistant tuberculosis in underserved communities. She hired staff, established protocols, and began treating patients who had no other options. It was the work she loved, made possible by the money she'd earned in the strangest way imaginable. She also started therapy to process everything that had happened. The kidnapping, the auction, the months in Italy, the complicated feelings about Enzo. Her therapist helped her understand that while the circumstances of their meeting were problematic, her feelings for him were valid, and her choices had been her own. He gave you agency when he could have taken it away, her therapist said. That matters. And your choice to return to him, if you do, will be made from a position of freedom and power. That's not something to feel guilty about. The 6 months passed both quickly and slowly. Simone built her foundation, treated patients, and slowly healed from the trauma of her kidnapping. She also stayed in contact with Maria, who sent regular updates on her health. The young woman was thriving, back to working with charities and living a full life. Enzo misses you, Maria wrote in one email. He tries to hide it, but I can tell. He walks past your old room sometimes and just stands there. Come back soon. I think my stubborn brother might actually die of loneliness. As the 6-month mark approached, Simone felt both nervous and excited. She had built a life for herself, proved that she could stand on her own, and she had never stopped thinking about Enzo, about the way he looked at her, about the life they could build together if they were brave enough to try. She booked a flight to Italy. Enzo was waiting at the airport, looking nervous for the first time since she'd met him. He was holding flowers, actual flowers, like a man picking up a date. Hello, Dr. Clark, he said formally as she approached. Hello, Mr. Calabrese, Simone replied with a smile. Would you like to have dinner with me, as a free woman with her own money and her own choices? I would love to. The dinner was at a small restaurant overlooking the Mediterranean, private and romantic. They talked for hours, catching up on the last 6 months, sharing stories and dreams. And when Enzo finally reached across the table to take her hand, it felt natural and right. I have spent 6 months thinking about you every day, he said. Wondering if you would really come back, hoping that what we had was real. It is real. I'm here, and I'm choosing you. Not because of obligation or circumstance, but because I love you. I love you too, more than I thought possible. Enzo lifted her hand to his lips. What happens now? Now we build something together. I have a foundation that treats TB patients. You have businesses that need to continue becoming legitimate. We both have complicated pasts, but hopefully a future that's less complicated. Together. They spent the next year building that future. Simone split her time between her foundation in the United States and Enzo's villa in Italy. He invested in her work, using his resources to help expand treatment to more patients. She helped him transition more of his businesses to legitimate enterprises, using her credibility and connections to open doors that had been closed to him. It wasn't always easy. There were still aspects of Enzo's business that made Simone uncomfortable. There were still moments when she wondered if she was making the right choice. But there were also moments of profound joy and connection, of building something meaningful together. Maria thrived, her TB completely cured. She became one of Simone's biggest supporters, helping with the foundation and introducing her to other wealthy benefactors who wanted to support the cause. You saved my life, she told Simone often. Now I get to help you save other people's lives. It is my honor. On a warm evening in June, exactly 1 year after Simone had returned to Italy, Enzo took her back to the villa's terrace where they had first talked about Maria's treatment. Do you remember this place? He asked. Of course. This is where we really started talking, where I first saw you as more than just the man who bought me. A lot has changed since then. Everything has changed since then. Enzo reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Simone Clark, You came into my life in the worst way possible. I bought you at an auction because I was desperate to save my sister. It was wrong, and I will carry that guilt forever. But you took that terrible beginning and turned it into something beautiful. You saved Maria's life. You changed my life. And you gave me something I never thought I would have: love, partnership, and hope for a better future. He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring. Will you marry me? Not because I paid for you or because you owe me anything, but because you choose me and I choose you and we want to build a life together? Simone's eyes filled with tears. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Enzo slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her, and Simone felt the last piece of her complicated journey fall into place. She had been kidnapped and auctioned and bought by a mafia boss, but she had also been treated with respect, given agency, and allowed to make her own choices. And her choice was this: to love a complicated man who had saved her life, even as she saved his sister's. They were married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the villa. Maria was Simone's maid of honor. Enzo's mother, who had died before Maria got sick, would have approved, Maria said. She had always wanted Enzo to find someone who saw him for who he really was, not just the role he played. She would have loved you, Maria told Simone. You make him better. You make him want to be better. He makes me better too. We balance each other. Their life together was everything Simone had hoped for, and things she hadn't dared to imagine. They worked together on both their foundations, expanding treatment for TB and other infectious diseases while also investing in legitimate businesses that provided jobs and opportunities. They traveled, they built relationships with people on both sides of the law, and they created something meaningful from the ashes of a terrible beginning. 2 years after their wedding, Simone delivered a presentation at a medical conference about innovative treatment protocols for drug-resistant TB. In the audience was a journalist who had been following her foundation's work. Dr. Calabrese, the journalist said afterward, your foundation has saved hundreds of lives. How did you get started in this work? Simone smiled at Enzo, who was waiting in the back of the room. I was working with Doctors Without Borders when circumstances changed my path. I met someone who needed help, and treating that one patient made me realize how many other patients needed the same kind of care. So I used resources that became available to me to build something bigger. It was the truth, carefully edited. She didn't mention the auction or the kidnapping. Those were private parts of their story, not for public consumption. What mattered was what they had built together. That evening, as they walked back to their hotel, Enzo took her hand. You could have told that journalist the whole story, about how we met, about everything. Why would I do that? It's our story, not theirs. And the important part isn't how we met. It's what we've built together. You are not ashamed of how we met? I'm not proud of it, but I'm not ashamed either. You did something wrong for the right reasons. I made the best of a terrible situation, and we both chose to build something good from it. That's what matters. Enzo pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. I love you, Dr. Calabrese. I love you too, Mr. Calabrese. 5 years after that night at the auction, Simone stood in a clinic in Moldova, in the same village where she had been kidnapped. But this time she wasn't alone. She was there with a full medical team, funded by her foundation, ready to treat an outbreak of drug-resistant TB. Enzo was with her, helping coordinate security and logistics. Maria was there too, using her experience as a TB survivor to counsel patients and their families. This is where it started, Simone said to Enzo as they watched the team set up. This is where I was taken. And now you are back, stronger and able to help more people than you ever could have alone. You have turned something terrible into something beautiful. We have. This is our work, Enzo, not just mine. He wrapped his arm around her waist. I still cannot believe you came back to me, that you chose me after everything. You gave me a choice when no one else would have. You paid $10 million for me, and then offered me freedom. How could I not love you for that? Most people would have run and never looked back. I'm not most people, and you're worth staying for. That evening, after treating dozens of patients, Simone and Enzo sat on the porch of the clinic's residence, watching the sun set over the village. It was the same view Simone had had all those years ago, before everything changed. Do you ever regret it? Enzo asked quietly. The way we met? The choices you had to make? Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been kidnapped. If I had just finished my work here and gone home. Where would I be now? Probably doing the same work, just with less funding. Simone laughed. True, but I wouldn't have you. I wouldn't have Maria. I wouldn't have built something as significant as our foundation. So no, I don't regret it. I wish it had happened differently, but I don't regret where I ended up. You are remarkable, Simone Calabrese. So are you, Enzo Calabrese. So are you. They sat together in comfortable silence as the sun set, two people who had found each other in the darkest circumstances and had chosen to build something beautiful together. That's the story of Dr. Simone Clark and Enzo Calabrese. A love born from an auction but built on respect, choice, and the shared desire to make something good from terrible circumstances. Their story proves that freedom isn't just about physical liberty, it's about having agency in your own life. That love can develop even in the most unlikely situations, when both people choose to see each other's humanity. And that sometimes the person who buys you is actually the person who sets you free. Simone and Enzo's relationship reminds us that context matters, but so do choices. That we can acknowledge problematic beginnings while still valuing what grows from them. That the right person will give you agency even when they have all the power. And that real love means being willing to let someone go so they can freely choose to come back. If this incredible story moved you, and you want to hear more amazing tales of unexpected protection, complicated love, and the transformative power of choice, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We share new stories every week about real people who discovered that love can bloom in the darkest places and that freedom is something you claim for yourself, not something someone grants you. What did you think of Simone and Enzo's story? Would you have returned after 6 months of freedom? How do you balance problematic circumstances with genuine connection? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing how these stories resonate with your own experiences of complicated love and difficult choices. Remember, love that respects your agency is worth fighting for, even when the beginning is messy. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next story.